Well, there's enormous anticipation here in the stadium for what Carl Lewis might produce in the long jump. Carl Lewis pacing out his long jump run-up. The conditions pretty awful here. High humidity, sticky conditions, the wind beginning to blow very strongly behind the jumpers. It could, of course, boost the performances a very long way, but the jumpers will have to be very careful about their run-ups because it will take them up to the board much quicker than they're used to. They may have some problems.
And worth reminding people that the legal wind is only 2 meters per second, so anything that's recorded will not count for record purposes.
Nonetheless, a very great competition ensue here between particularly Carl Lewis and Mike Powell. Mike Powell, who came so close to beating Carl Lewis earlier this year at the TAC Championships. But Carl Lewis, ever the competitor, came back on the very last jump to win it. Unbeaten since 1981. First round jump for Mike Powell, one of the big favourites in the long jump, won 13 out of 14 competitions this year. The one defeat being to Carl Lewis himself. Well, that wasn't a terribly good opener for Powell, I have to say. It's short of 8 meters, 7.85. This is only Carl Lewis's second long jump competition of 1991. You wouldn't think that's the credentials to come in as the firm favourite, but this man is something else. All eyes are on this supreme athlete, the world champion of 1983 and 1987, at this event. At this event alone, he's one of the greatest athletes of all time, unbeaten since 1981, and of course he's a great sprinter to boot. There it is, the lead by a huge margin, surely somewhere 850 plus. An area of long jumping that only Carl Lewis has ever been really truly consistent at. The long jump record, of course, still stands to Bob Beamon at 8 meters 90, but he was only once anywhere near that. The wind has died down completely. You saw the gauge there showing 0.0. There's a lull in the wind readings, and it's the opportunity for Carl Lewis to show us his true mettle. 65 successive long jump wins he's had, and it's a very big leap. It's 8 meters 68, the best in the world this year. And a new World Championships record for Carl Lewis, the first of his 6 jumps.
And that might be the gold medal straight away for him, although Mike Powell could have other ideas, I guess.
I'm sure Mike Powell ought to have other ideas, but I frankly would be surprised if anyone exceeds that. While on the runway, Mike Powell, reckoned the man most likely to challenge Carl for the gold medal, got off a very disappointing opening jump of 7 meters 85. Personal best of 8 meters 66, and up in the high altitude of Sestriere this year with the wind behind him, he jumped 8 meters 73. Well, that's the area he's going to go, going to have to go if he's going to challenge the lead of Carl Lewis, 868. Oh, and that's a much better jump. There's runners preparing for a heat of the 5,000 meters, slightly obscuring the view as to exactly where he landed, but that is very likely to have moved him up into second place. Second place at the moment, the 8 meters 01 that Dietmar Haaf of Germany jumped in the first round. Surprisingly, before this jump of Mike Powell, only 2 men beyond 8 meters, though of course Larry Myrick's also was well over that, but a no jump in the first round. Mike Powell's distance, 8 meters 54, right up into second place. Remember back in the 1984 Olympic Games, Carl Lewis disappointed the crowd a little bit by deigning only to take 1 long jump. It was all he needed to get the gold medal, of course. Wind conditions now almost still, slightly surprisingly. But on this occasion, Carl Lewis is quite happy to take most of his jumps, I suspect, because he knows there's good men behind him. He knows there's men like Mike Powell, whom we can't underestimate, who can get beyond this 8 meters 68 that he's laid down, the challenge he's laid down in the first round. And of course, Carl, well, are times running out for him to beat that great world record set by Bob Beamon up in the high altitude of Mexico City in 1968. Carl, who's never competed at high altitude, never given him that advantage which he thinks is almost akin to cheating. Wants to do it at sea level. Oh, that's the way. Surely he's getting closer. Surely that's even beyond The angle is perhaps slightly deceptive here. We must be a bit wary about that. It looked to be pretty close to 9 metres, and of course one of the reasons was he did go a little bit too far over into the plasticine. But having that big jump behind him, what he wants to do is stretch it to the limit and use every inch of that takeoff board. Powell, there was a hush for Carl Lewis when he jumped. The steady clapping urged on by Mike Powell, just 14 centimetres down on Lewis. This is the third round. It's a big one, but it's not, I think, big enough. Lewis 8.68, Powell 8.54. Shakes his head. He's jumping well. It's going to be what it is, a great clash between two of the greatest long jumpers of all time. The wind just behind him, but half the legal limit, 0.9 metres per second. Carl Lewis takes the runway in the third round of the long jump. 8.68 his lead, then a no jump. Behind him, Mike Powell is in second place at 8.54. The German, Dietmar Haaf, splitting the Americans with a wind-assisted 8.22, and Larry Myrick's completing that great trio of Americans with 8 metres 20. Carl Lewis at the top of world sprinting and of world long jumping for 12 seasons now, and he seems to be in the best form of his life. Only competed once in the long jump this year, won that, just beat Mike Powell in the American Championships, and already with a season's best of 8.68 in the first round of this competition. Oh, that's a wonderful jump by Carl Lewis. The wind is over the limit at 2.8, I think it is, metres per second, but this is gold medal stuff, all right. Carl Lewis, the world champion of 1983, the world champion of 1987, sees the wind, where's 2.3 in fact. The Olympic champion from 1984, the Olympic champion from 1988. That's just at the long jump, and all those sprint gold medals as well, all the relay gold medals and the relay world records to his credit. Surely the greatest natural athlete we've ever seen. The long jump distance coming up, it's 8 metres 83. Well, the wind is over the limit, but that's the biggest jump of Carl Lewis's life. There it is, there's 9 metres, and there is the world record by Bob Beamon at 8.90. Robert Emian jumped 8.86 for the European record, but both of those were at extreme high altitude, which must make something like 30 centimetres different. Rare indeed to two men to jump beyond 8.50 in one competition, but they have today. Now Mike Powell is a long way behind Lewis. That's a magnificent jump. That surely is the jump of the day for him. Now 8.54 before then in second place. Oh, the red flag is raised. He doesn't believe it. The official took a long time to raise the flag. He must have been so close to the plasticine. He says, where? It isn't there, I can't see it. Well, he's a very upset man indeed. We'll look with the replay at a great deal of interest, because Powell's jump was surely well ahead of his previous best at 8.54, and maybe even getting close to Lewis's 8.83. The despair. Oh dear, well, we need to see the replay of that.
Here it is, Peter. What a dramatic moment. There it is.
Well, yes, it is just, isn't it? But, oh dear, just a millimetre or two. Let's look again. Powell giving it his all, sprinting hard down the runway. Hits that takeoff ball, what he thought was absolutely perfectly. Proved to be a little bit too much. Hitch kicks out. Oh, it's a mighty jump. A mighty jump. Must have been close to Lewis's 8.83. Well, he's got 2 jumps to go. So that's, even by Carl Lewis's standards, an unprecedented series of jumps. The best jump of his life. A wind-assisted 8 metres 83. That's his target, 9 metres. The world record of Bob Beamon at 8 metres 90. The old championship best shown there. Well, that's gone. They'll need to move that up, right up to 8 metres 83. The best ever long jump, other than at very high altitude. We've already seen that today, even if the wind was up a little puff over the permitted limit of 2 metres per second. What's it now? I think, well, it's the flags are blowing fairly gently. It's probably around that. But of course it's really virtually ideal conditions. Were the wind to be at 1.9 or 2 metres per second, the maximum possible advantage, the stimulus of competition, the marvellous facility here, the stimulus of a great athlete here going for it. Well, that's going to be very close indeed. A magnificent jump by Carl Lewis. Let's look to see the wind. Oh, the wind's over the limit. What a shame. It's 2.9 meters per second. These fantastic conditions here. It won't be a record, whatever happens, but how far is it? That's almost as important. Carl Lewis, he started with 868. The wind was below the limit then. Then a big no jump. Then 883. The wind just over the limit. He's very interested. Never before have we seen such a display of long jumping, even by this man. 891, the longest long jump in history. What a shame that wind is a little over the limit, but that is undoubtedly the greatest jump we've seen. It doesn't have the advantage of high altitude like Bob Beamon had, and Carl Lewis has produced the jump of all our lifetimes. The photographers and everyone else here are on their feet. 8 meters 91. Well, the impact that the world felt when Beamon went out to 8 meters 90 was terrific, and Carl Lewis has at long last excelled it, even if it's not a world record.
Well, people who are privileged to be here today will talk about this for decades to come. Just as they talked about Bob Beamon's jump, what a pity that puff of wind just over made that illegal for the world record, that legendary world record of Bob Beamon, to disappear at last. Phenomenal, isn't he?
Absolutely phenomenal. He hits the board perfectly. There can be no more than perfection in that, and he's got 2 jumps to go. Long jump, Mike Powell. So unlucky in the previous round to be denied a huge jump by a marginal no jump. Now what's this one going to be? Well, it looks like 9 meters. What's flag's going to be raised? Is he getting the red flag or the white flag this time? Fantastic performance here by Powell in response to Lewis's 8 meters 91. The wind is legal, 0.3 meters per second for Powell's 5th jump. What fantastic jumping by Mike Powell, and Carl Lewis can but look on. Carl Lewis, undefeated in 65 consecutive long jump competitions coming before. He's produced the longest jump in history, 891, and he's being beaten. It's 895. Bob Beamon's world record has been smashed by Mike Powell. 5 centimeters added to that historical jump made nearly 23 years ago in the high altitude of Mexico City. And could we believe it, 2 men in this competition have gone beyond that. Carl Lewis, who's got another jump to come, and Mike Powell now, the world record holder in the long jump.
This is phenomenal. This is the greatest long jump competition ever staged. Unbelievable. Lewis 891 goes past the Beamon mark, albeit illegally, and Powell tops it. The crowd are stunned.
It's very hard to believe what we've seen. We have seen some fantastic jumping by Powell this year. And Carl Lewis, can he believe it? 891, and he may get beaten. Now then, Lewis, he's been unbeaten since 1981. When Powell went ahead of him in the American Championships, Lewis responded with his very final jump. It's really singing up. Let's look again. History here. Powell striding out, those legs seeming never to get to ground. It's just like Beamon. It's just like the world saw that tremendous speed down the runway, and everything was right about that jump. The leg shoot was fantastic, the technique was perfect. See how he hits the board? Pretty good. There's a millimetre or 2 to spare, but it wasn't just over as the previous jump had been, and the world record has gone at last, and not to Lewis.
And who got the picture of that? Because the person who got the picture of Bob Beamon's jump has become a very rich man indeed as a result of it. Well, they all did, didn't they?
The world was waiting for that one. They were waiting for both Lewis and Powell, and there's scores of photographers around there. Well, there's a rare excitement here. That was the 5th round of the long jump competition. Powell's 5th. Lewis will come shortly, and then both of them will have a 6th jump. It may not be the end of the story yet. No competition before 2 men have ever jumped anything remotely like this. After Mike Powell's epic world record, Larry Myrick's came out, and he improved a centimetre to 8 meters 42. 8:42, that's a great distance, but it's over 50 centimeters down on Mike Powell, and that's the 3rd place. Well, now there's Powell watching. for the great Carl Lewis? Well, his series in the long jump, he started with 8.68. He then had a massive no jump. He then did a wind-assisted 8.83. He then did a wind-assisted 8.91, the greatest long jump in history, and it's been passed. But he is par excellence a competitor. Looking around, I wonder if the wind is going to be as kind to him as it was to Powell if it were to come to record-breaking purposes. But even more important than getting the record is for Carl Lewis to win. He isn't used to losing. The last man who beat him was Larry Myrick's, and it was back in 1981. Since then, 65 consecutive long jump victories. How can he respond to Powell's challenge? Just look at that. Just look at that. It's getting very close again. This is wonderful display. The wind is legal this time. It's 0.2 meters per second against, and we wait for the distance. It's certainly one of the best jumps in history. We've had 3 of them already today. Lewis's own 8.83 and 8.91. Powell's own 8.95. This may well be the best jump in Carl Lewis's life, at least, with legal wind assistance. That's the legal wind assistance. The wind slightly against. A mere zephyr, 0.2 meters per second. Let's look again at this superb man and his response down the runway. It is the longest jump of Lewis's life with the legal wind. It's 8 meters 87, but it's still behind Powell. Well, now, Mike Powell relaxes. He can't rest on the laurels of beating Beeman's record, though. He's got a jump to go, but so too following him is Lewis. Mike Powell, the last jump of the long jump, already the world record holder at 8.95, but he knows Lewis can respond to that. What's he going to produce now? It's another huge jump in this fantastic display of long jumping we're having here. The longest 4 jumps already ever achieved at sea level. Maybe that's the 5th one too. No, it's a no jump just. Some mighty no jumps. But in the 5th round, Mike Powell got in that world record of 8.95, and he says a little prayer. Second place by 4 centimeters down on the great new world record of 8.95 by this man, Mike Powell. Wow, let's recap Lewis's series. He started with 8.68, the best jump of 1991. That was put behind him. After a no jump, he did 8.83, then 8.91, then 8.87. All those around the distance that Bob Beeman's 8.90 meters established as the almost unbeatable world record back in Mexico City in 1968. Carl Lewis, who hasn't lost since 1981. Carl Lewis, the greatest athlete of our time, perhaps the greatest athlete of all time, facing even his greatest challenge ever.
And Powell, of course, will remember that Lewis did it with the last jump in the US Championships.
If Lewis can come here, I have no hesitation in saying it's the greatest competitive achievement we've ever seen in the history of athletics. If Carl Lewis. What a target this man has in front of him now. The buzz is growing around this stadium. Look at that! Well, whatever, what a response! It's close to 9 meters yet again. Oh, it's close. It's very, very close. The wind is under the limit at 1.7 meters per second. We came into this event with the world record at 8.90. The best ever jump at sea level, Carl Lewis's own 8.78. That's been smashed here. We've had a great series. Lewis 8.83, 8.91, 8.87. Mike Powell 8.95. What will this last jump of Lewis turn out to be? Congratulations between the two great men looking there. It's 8.84 and Lewis has to settle for the greatest series ever, but only the silver medal behind Mike Powell, the new world record holder and world champion in the long jump. Beeman's record's gone. Powell embraces everyone he can find, the judges, in his greatest moment of his life. And it wasn't a bad moment for Carl Lewis too, the greatest series we've ever seen in the long jump.
And Peter, the latest in a series of shocks at these World Championships. Carl Lewis's 10-year win streak comes to an end, but what a way for it to end.